I think the American dream is being diluted to an egotistical, capitalistic thought that is like, let's make as much money as possible. The American dream is also about providing jobs.
Yeah.
It's about making a quality of life for the people that you support, delivering an amazing product to the customer. If you have established yourself for 25, 30, 40, 50 years, and you've continued to delight and deliver on behalf of your customer, that is success.
All right, we're sitting down here for part 2, and Andrew goes off, and it's what happens when you go to Seattle.
I know. I think I'm allergic to the politics there.
Andrew comes back with a cold. You were supposed to be going to a Pink concert out there, but then she canceled her concert, so you went 1,000 miles or 800 miles away for a date, a dinner date and back.
Yeah, we couldn't get a refund, so we just we made the most of it.
Spoiler alert with your wife Crystal, who you're still married to, because at the end of the podcast, at the end of first half, she was kind of giving you the ultimatum of me or the military.
Yep.
And so let's jump into that a little bit. At that point, you've kind of made you said you knew the decision was pretty clear.
Yeah.
How is that? How long did that kind of transition take from being where you were at that time to actually being out?
Well, so I basically told her, when we had decided that was going to be the case, we made the decision to not rush out. We wanted to set conditions because the way that I looked at it is in the civilian world, I had to qualify my experience up until that point. Mm-hmm. So between leadership, basic operations, all of that kind of stuff that you kind of get from that experience, I needed something to credentialize that. So we talked about it, and I hadn't used my GI Bill, so we decided that I was going to use my GI Bill and get and go back to school to just qualify all that experience. So I applied to a bunch of top 25 business schools and ended up going to Washington State University. Mm-hmm. So I called in a favor, basically, from some other people that I knew that were in Human Resources Command, and was able to get an assignment that was co-located where Washington State University was, or at least near it. So I ended up going to Spokane, Washington.
Okay.
Going there, I took command of the military entrance processing station there, so the MEPS station. So anybody that's ever gone through the military, before they go to basic training, they go to MEPS. After they've talked to the recruiter, it's where they get medically checked. It's where they get all their contracting done. And it's where they get sworn into the military. So I took that as an opportunity to kind of like take a step back and really focus on school while I could continue to work on, my career.
Right.
Keep, getting paid.
Yeah.
Be able to kind of use the GI Bill to go to school and then, continue employment and take care of my family.
Sure. And so you earned your degree from Wazoo then?
Yep.
In business management?
Yeah, no, I
business finance or
my master's in business administration and in marketing. So I got 2 degrees.
Okay.
That was pretty, what was really great about that was, in college, I wasn't a super great student. I got a lot better, because like I said earlier that I needed to graduate. And I needed to do well because it's an order of merit list and then when you're commissioning. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting to basically get, your student back on, if you will, and get, kind of get back into the whole academia. The major change was I was a lot more mature, which there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah.
I tell a lot of people when they're like, yeah, I just graduated and did my undergrad and I'm ready to go do my master's. I tell, hey, take a break.
Yeah.
Take some time because I think, especially as guys, we don't mature. Well, we really don't mature ever, but
I know I haven't.
But, by the time, you're 30 or 31, 32, one, you're paying for it. Well, the government was paying for it, but it's still the same thing, right? You're going there because you want to.
Yeah, that's a different scenario, and you've gotten to a point where you also can kind of see the end of one career, and you got to have a beginning somehow. That's the biggest challenge that I see for veterans getting out And I think that's some of the biggest struggles that people have with not, it's tough because you've got all this experience doing all these amazing things in the military, difficult things. I don't mean you, I mean everybody. And especially these guys that have operated overseas and been in the worst conditions and whatnot. And then there's no way for a lot of that stuff to transfer into civilian life. And it's got to be incredibly frustrating because they feel like, they can lead people, or they feel like they're very capable, which they are. But then, like, how does that relate? Like you ended up with Amazon, but like, how does that relate to Amazon? Right. And you're right. The leadership side of what you learned, especially with the path that you took through the Army, leadership was a huge part of that. And obviously leadership's a huge part of that in business, but not everybody in the military ends up in a leadership role either. I mean, a lot of guys are kind of being told what to do and when to do it. So it's tough to see guys really struggling, because I think that's some of the biggest things, the lack of purpose or the lack of direction and really lack of like foresight of where they're headed, where they're going.
Yeah, let's unpack that a little bit, because I tell anybody getting out of the military that they need to have a plan, and they've all heard that as well. But that plan doesn't have to be like the grand plan. It doesn't have to be like, this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And it's hard for a lot of guys because that's what they thought when they were in the military, or some of them did it for 20 years. And they're like, now what do I do?
It's much like graduating high school.
Really?
And your parents are telling you, oh, you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
And, my own daughter, Demi, struggles with that a little bit about, like, what do you want to do for the rest of your life?
Right.
And that's the wrong way to look at
exactly
it.
Right.
Like I tell people all the time, people a lot of times assume that I've had life figured out since I was 11, since I started making knives then. But, in reality, I made knives as a kid, but then I worked for my parents, but then I went to college for engineering, and that didn't work out. And I ended up dropping out of college and working back again for my parents. Then I went to business school in Great Falls, and then I moved to Missoula and went to work for an excavation contractor. And then I quit that and I made knives. And then I quit that and became what I thought was a welder. And then I quit that and became a journeyman lineman. And then I quit that and I've got Montana Knife Company.
Yeah.
The point of saying all that is that, like, for someone from the outside that everybody just thinks like, oh, you've just been a knife guy your whole entire life. I told Demi, I've kind of had, quote unquote, things figured out with what I want to do in life and still changed jobs 7 or 8 times. So, for people to have to figure out what they want to be for the rest of their life out of high school, and especially really after 20, the problem with 20 years in the military is you're coming out at 40 years old. So a lot of people feel like they're too old, like at least with coming out of high school, you got your whole life ahead of you.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys, and I'll be honest, even in the trades, like as becoming like an apprentice lineman, man, 40 years old, like they would rather hire the kid that's 20 and they can yell at him and call him stupid and tell him what to do, and they'll get 25, 30, 40 years out of that kid.
Yep.
So it is a disadvantage being 40 in a way, but in another way, you've got that maturity, and that's the part that the guys in the military need to understand is they have the life experience and the maturity that the 20-year-old doesn't. Yeah. And that's how you beat that kid.
Yeah. And so, like, and that's what I thought about it. You have to qualify that experience, though. I think there's some ego that's really hard to get around when you've had 20 years or 15 years or whatever. I was in my mid-30s, and you really have to accept the fact that you're going to go back to square one again, and you're not going to know anything, and you've got to be okay with that. But like I said, you do need to look at how that translates to the civilian world, and it does take a little bit of soul searching and just being cool with the fact that you're going to be on the bottom of a totem pole somewhere, and you're going to have to do this all over again. But you need to be really proud of what you did before that. Yeah. And use that, but not be entitled for it. Right. One of my favorite things is that Matt Best book, Thank You for My Service. I just love the middle finger of what that is. Like, and it's a great concept to think about, right? Like, you got to get over that whole thing of, you did this amazing thing and it was your identity. So those are the two things: is have a plan and remember that wasn't your identity. But the feeling you get from it is what you should, if that's what you want in life, you need to find another place like that. And there's lots of them, or build it yourself. Yeah. So Yeah, so I spent 2 years doing my MBA while I was still in the service, swearing people into the military. It was a nice full circle moment. Meanwhile, Crystal and I were continuing to kind of work out that marriage stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't easy. We were on the rocks the entire time. And you'd think like, hey, yeah, I'm getting out and I'm doing what you want. But a lot of relational damage happens throughout that time period. And there's a lot of healing that has to happen. So we got really close to divorce a bunch of times.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that has to do with kind of the enculturation you have in the military, I think. Some of it has to do with the shame in not being able to do both. I think that's something that I still struggle with was, hey, I didn't get to do the career that I wanted to and be able to be the best husband and father I could.
Right.
And so, especially if you're drinking a bunch and you're dealing with some PTS or whatever, and then on top of that, you feel like you're failing, it can get really dark really, really quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's hard for a lot of people to relate to because you've been so great at the stuff you were doing in the military, and you can't figure out being a good husband or a father on top of it all. So you just stuck with a level of shame and self-deprecation that, and I know it sounds like, oh, feel sorry for yourself, but that's ultimately where I think a lot of veteran suicides come from.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, the loss of identity, and then the fear of failure, or the failure that you have to deal with whether it's a spouse or you got mad at your kids, or you did something stupid, or you just got drunk and got in a big fight with your wife. And
right.
Anyway, so there's a lot of stuff to manage, I think, in that process. So I had to learn how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have the escape of like, I have to be at, work at 4:30 in the morning and
right.
train and hyper focus on those things. And that's ultimately what happens is like, I had an excuse the entire time I was in the military not to deal with that stuff.
Right.
And Crystal and my family obviously had to pay that price.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we were left figuring it out, kind of like we were brand new married again.
Mm-hmm.
After when I had a bunch of time all of a sudden, where I had like a 9-to-5 job without any fear of, going overseas or, so there was a lot to learn and a lot for us to kind of work through and still work through. I think but it helped us, it forced us to build a foundation because we were committed to staying obviously married and
right.
parent and all that stuff.
Yeah. I think, too often though, I think veterans think that they may be the only ones or there's a lot of guys out there that are gone a lot because of their jobs as well. Truck drivers, right, are on the road, and how often are they home? A couple days a month, right?
Yep.
My dad, my entire childhood growing up in the summer was out the door at 5 a.m. and rolling in at 9 or 10 and doing paperwork and doing mechanicking or whatever, and back out the next morning at 5. And like, we maybe had Sunday off, maybe. And I think it's more common. I think a lot of veterans also have to remember that it's actually real common, I think, for a lot of guys especially, to actually live with some regret or guilt or whatever about how things were when their kids were younger, because they were doing the thing that they thought they needed to be doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
Working those hours to get their family ahead and whatever. And maybe they should have taken a day off and gone fishing, right? Or maybe they should have taken a day off and gone to that kid's basketball game. And so they look back when their kids are 17 and they realize they missed a ton when they were young. But you have to look back also and realize, like, were you doing a lot of what you were doing for the right intentions at the moment, right? Now, when someone hands you a baby and you're 20 years old, 25 years old, and they're just like, good luck. Yeah. You guys have fun. Like, there's not really a real good manual on how to do that. And even if there is a manual, like, you read it, you don't understand it. You can't figure that out. Right. And so, I look back at, You know, and I think it's not uncommon for anybody to look back and look at time lost, time they should have spent, especially as their kids start winding the clock down. Like I have 5 years left and all my kids are gone from school, from home. So, you know, it's easy to start looking back and being like, man, I should have done more here. I should have done more there. But then you tack the military onto it and you tack all the stressors of all that stuff on.
Sure.
But I tend to think that a lot of times there's more people dealing with that than even veterans have any idea about, because it's easy to feel like, you know, like you were failing at home or doing whatever, but like you were doing the best with what you had at the time.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's tough. I mean, with the spouses, you hear it all the time. I mean, it's incredibly tough on the spouses. And I look at, like, even in the lineman world, because that's what I'm familiar with, the contract linemen, that they think they're doing the right thing, and they're going and they're working storms, or they're working down in California, they're working in Arizona, and they're making $300,000 a year, and they're crushing it, and they're sending checks home, and they think that that's what the family needs, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of linemen end up divorced, right? And women need more of that emotional connection, that face-to-face, and so then it causes all this, you know, tension in the relationship and in the marriage. But at a certain point too, once you're out, the spouses also have to be willing to only look forward and not look back. And really in any marriage, if you,
boy, that's a hard thing.
If you continue to look back, you're gonna continue missing things that are actually ahead of you.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna keep looking back and being like, oh, and we missed that too, and we missed that too. And it's like, well, yeah, just turn around and only look forward.
Yeah.
That's something that has to be a conscious decision, to where at a certain point, like, we are not going to talk about the past anymore.
Yeah.
Only what's ahead, our goals, our plans, our future.
Yeah. It takes a lot of discipline for that, though, you know, and I think, man, everybody gets in that situation in a marriage, right? But to your point,
yeah, and I'm divorced, I know.
Yeah. But to your point, I think, you do have, like, learning, you grow up together. Like that's something that a lot of people forget, and when both people in the marriage, usually don't acknowledge that, you know, they both have grown up together in some way, shape, and changed a lot. And they may not think so. And, you know, reconciling who you are in that point is a lot different person than it was whenever drama or past history or anything like that comes up. So yeah, being super present and then making those decisions in real time, I think, are really important too. And we did, you know, that's why we did get out. Like the overall concept or theme or whatever, I think the big picture of it, we still kept, you know, in front of us, which is why we stayed married through that process. Was we knew, like, okay, well, just off-ramped out of something that was a major career. We're in the middle of doing something else to set conditions for the next thing. And Crystal did the same thing. So after, I think, after I was done, I still had basically another year before my time was officially up. And so I was going to spend that time job searching, right? Crystal at the same time went back to school and got her teaching degree. So she was doing the same thing. We both agreed, you know, let's basically set this up to where, you know, when it's time, we can completely off ramp. We're both set, we're both working, we both can start providing and moving forward. So I started applying. Crystal finished school, and she only had 2 years left, and she basically did that in 18 months. She crushed it. It was amazing. Meanwhile, raising babies, you know, and having kids go to school and all that fun stuff. So that was a really dynamic time for us, where, you know, she supported me wholeheartedly through me getting my MBA, and then I got to turn around and do the same thing while she went to school. So that was really good for us, kind of working on each other's future. So I applied to 100 different jobs, and this was in 2017, 2018. Literally 100 different jobs. I applied to every defense level job just because I wanted to go to somewhere I knew, or something I knew that I could kind of speak intelligently on, or something that I could learn a lot and grow. So I applied to like Lockheed, General Dynamics, every major defense contractor, something in aerospace, in tech, so like Facebook or Google or whatever, anything like that where I knew I could make a decent living. It was going to challenge me, and it was something that the future was only going to get bigger. So like SpaceX, Blue Origin. I applied to all of those. I applied to a bunch of marketing firms. In a marketing degree, and Brandon will say this too. Our marketing or chief marketing officer. A marketing degree means absolutely nothing, and it is not a difficult thing to get. It's really the reps.
Right.
It's really sales. It's really learning. You can't be effective in that field without having true experience. You've got to eat it and be an intern. You've got to do a bunch of that stuff.
Right.
And so that's a long, hard path too. And you're not going to land the 6-figure job you're looking for right out of the gate with a marketing degree, whether it's a master's or not.
Right.
You're just not going to. So I applied everywhere, all over the country. We wanted to be either in Florida, where Crystal's from, or we wanted to be in the Pacific Northwest somewhere, right? Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, somewhere where we both knew the areas and we both kind of knew. And we'd been in Spokane for a while and we liked it a lot. And it was as close to like Montana life that we could get while still making a living and still having all the amenities and all that stuff. So anyway, I kept applying, and I only got one callback out of 100 jobs, and it was Amazon.
Really?
Yeah, one. So that was an eye-opening experience too.
Yeah, especially with an MBA and with all your experience, you would think,
right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I had to translate, and honestly, I really just needed to get on the phone with somebody. The other thing is your experience. You have to distill your experience in the military into civilian terms. And I see it all the time where guys overinflate that too. So like if I see a military guy getting out and his resume says, oh, he was a director of operations here, or he was a operations manager there, and they're just trying to distill, hey, that role meant this. It didn't. So that's caution, like people who know what they're doing are going to sniff through that and see like, hey, that isn't what that is. You've got to earn that experience in a different realm.
So where was the Amazon place you got offered at?
What state? So the way that it worked, I'll kind of go through this process because I think it's important. I applied and was accepted. Well, I applied and got interviews for what's called the Pathways program. Amazon has a program, or had, I don't know if they still do, had a program where they took Ivy League MBAs or senior military officers and non-commissioned officers with a bunch of experience that were top block, meaning that their evals were all 1 blocks for their career, high-performing people, and they put you in a big pool and basically hire you out of that pool. But you go through a massive hiring process. So first there's a phone screen, and you go through like 3 or 4 phone screens. And these are all little gates that you're going through. And then after I made it through those 3 or 4 phone screens, they put you on an airplane and you go in front of a board. And you get interviewed by 4 or 5 people, all in different parts of the business, all senior members at Amazon in different fields, whether that's operations, HR, safety. And they have basically, I know how the sausage is made now because I've been on some of those. But when I was going through it, I didn't know, like, they all have attributes that they're looking for. And so, like, I flew into LA and had this big interview, and you spend they don't tell you anything. It's very, very selection-like, where you show up, they ask you a bunch of behavioral style questions, like, tell me about a time. And they're all looking for certain things, and you have no idea what they're looking for. And you have to have experience already that translates to that role. And just to break down kind of what the Pathways program is it's a fast-track program to get executive-level operations leadership into Amazon. Amazon was growing, or is growing still, so fast that they can't, and this was at a time when they were building fulfillment, the fulfillment business to be less than 2 days. So it's called 2-day core and then turned into 1-day core. Basically saying that, hey, if you're a Prime member, we are trying to guarantee you that you buy anything within 2 days, it'll be on your front doorstep. And we are trying to scale to within 1 day, anywhere in the country. Now, they couldn't get the talent to do that. They had to scale, and they
lowered their standards and hired you.
Yeah. Long story short, we can just cut the podcast. I think at that point, I think we're done.
Amazon's going down.
Yeah. So I went through all of this. I mean, I had a bunch of SEALs, a Blue Angels pilot, and a bunch of guys with like Harvard MBAs in my class, and they only hired like 3 of us out of that group. And so I did get hired, and then they give you a choice of location. Basically, say like, hey, what are your top places in the country? And it's very similar to the military. Everything about Amazon was a lot like the military, but it was.
That's your favorite place? We're going to send you somewhere else.
So, I mean, it was a little bit better than that because, basically they said, hey, all of these are all the places that there's like open areas. And, I didn't know this then, but I do now, like each fulfillment center kind of has a slot or 2 slots for pathways. And so, I think I picked, Seattle was one, at BFI4, which all of the names of the fulfillment centers are basically airport codes, right? And then the number is the number of Amazon buildings or type of building that's affiliated with that part of the business. Anyway, so I think it was Seattle. I put Seattle. I think I put Denver, and I think we put Minneapolis. And the only reason we put Minneapolis is my parents actually had moved there from Montana. Well, they went to California and then Montana because my mom had continued in the banking industry and was eventually a vice president for U.S. Bank in commercial lending, and U.S. Bank's headquartered out of Minneapolis. So we thought, well, that's a good option too, just in case we get it. Well, we got it. And so we're like, great, the kids are going to be next to grandparents. Meanwhile, I had heard, and we loved Spokane when we lived there. And meanwhile, I had heard that Amazon had basically secured some ground in Airway Heights to build a building. And I thought to myself, that's going to take 2 or 3 years to happen. I'm going to work my ass off in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and Airway Heights is Spokane.
Is Spokane, yeah, sorry. But I kind of was like, okay, I think there's a chance that we can end up back here because we'd built a support system in Spokane. We had great friends. My sister lived there, my half-sister, et cetera. And so it was like we were really looking at like that being an opportunity, but I had to show up for it. So I took the job in Minneapolis as an operations manager. But the way that the Pathways program works is it starts you at the very bottom from a operations managerial standpoint, and it's up to you to promote yourself through all the way up until you're a general manager, an L8, which Amazon's only is pretty flat in terms of its hierarchy, right? It's got basically 12 levels. The executive level starts at level 8. Anyway, so I came in and basically had to learn the business as fast as humanly possible, and you have to perform. You have to be a top level person that gets rated like that every single year, and then there's several boards you have to go to. You have to promote. It's the same process as when you get hired there, so it becomes hyper competitive, and you have to get smart really fast.
Yeah.
So I loved it. It was basically back in the military again, hyper competitive, and it was really on you to figure it out.
Yeah.
So I get to Minneapolis, I get into an area manager in the inbound department at a fulfillment center, MSP1, which is about 850,000 square foot facility with about 1.6 or 1.7 million square feet internal capacity for fulfillment. I had about 2,000 or 3,000 people there. And so I get, on a shift on a certain day, 410 shift with about 40 to 60 associates. And what's really interesting is that area, Amazon, about 49, almost 50% of the population of that fulfillment center was Somali, because Minneapolis is a World Heritage or whatever it's called, relocation site, basically for people that are immigrating to the United States from that part of the country. So the Somali population is hugely tribal. And
how were they to work with?
Depends.
Yeah.
Honestly, because they're so tribal, you have to earn a lot of trust. And honestly, it was the exact same thing as it was in the military. If you do right by that group, they're going to tell each other. They're going to tell their friends. They're going to fight to be on your team if you really take good care of them. You also have to be fair, but firm like you do anywhere else. But as long as you're fair, no problem. I think a lot of people struggled because the culture was a lot different, especially if you were a female leader there. I think the female leaders had it a lot harder just because of the culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they had prayer time, so like they were leaving their station to do their prayer time. And again, my experience in the military translated really, really well to that.
Right.
So that was good.
Yeah.
So I earned a lot of trust from that and was able to get those teams to perform really, really, really well. And the way Amazon manages performance is for buildings, for departments, for shifts, it's a standardized level of performance that's difficult enough that you have to always innovate. And it's part of their financial plan too. So the pressure is on you, and you have to get whatever that organization is. You have to figure it out operationally. What are the barriers to success, and build systems in place in order to be successful and basically have that shift or that department or whatever perform, to whatever the standard is. And that standard is laid out over, lots and lots of planning.
Mm-hmm.
So you owe that.
Right.
And so that was my first exposure to operational, building operational efficiencies and understanding operations in general, really, and just learning the fundamentals of that.
Right. Did you move up there pretty quickly over the next couple of years?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. So I was really, I think I was really lucky. I had a great group of leaders, and I was really motivated to be successful. So I learned quickly, and I was one of the fastest promoting people in that program, the history of that program. There's actually one other gal, Andrea Donegan, shout out to her. We both promoted. By that time, we promoted to our senior operations manager in 18 months, which it's like a 3-year timeline.
Yeah.
So I went from running a shift to running an entire department, to eventually being able to. Then you start jumping over to different parts of the business inside of one of those facilities until you basically have learned everything there is to do. So at the same time, I find out that they're finally breaking ground on the Spokane facility, and I made it clear to the general manager at the time at MSP that I wanted to crack at that.
Yeah.
But the guy that was originally tasked to run that site, he gets his pick of the litter.
Mm-hmm.
He basically gets to build a team. And so luckily I had enough of a reputation. And like I said, Amazon's pretty flat. Those buildings, at the time, I think there was 20 some odd buildings like that. And so you get to know everybody, and your reputation kind of precedes you because you're really there innovating on behalf of the entire business.
Sure.
And Amazon allows you to do that. Each one of those facilities is an individual business. So you live and die by that. So I had a good enough reputation that that my name kind of got thrown in the hat to join this team. And so I got on a phone call and interviewed basically with this group of guys that were going to launch this building. And so I got selected to do that. So it was me and 6 other guys and one gal. And we were basically on the hook to launch the facility. So the facility it was pretty much just concrete. The concrete superstructure had basically been built. And it was a 640,000 square foot facility, but 4 stories tall. So it had 2.4 million square feet of robotics platform.
Man.
And so we were given basically the task of launching that building, hiring all of the leadership for that building, setting conditions to hire within the community, and then optimize that building. It was the second building of that type. The first one of that type was built in Oklahoma. So then we just basically got together, started building our plan, all of the project management for it, and we had to hire. So we spent basically 2 or 3 months straight of just hiring.
Which is
Interviews.
How many people are you trying to hire?
So we were going to launch that at almost 5,000 people.
And honestly, Spokane's not, I mean, it's big compared to where we are here, but it's not that big of a city. Like 5,000 people, 5,000 workers, which clearly you're not pulling them all from Spokane. You're going to have to bring in some people, but that's a huge amount of demand on a small area.
Yeah. So there was always going to be a percentage around 50-50 of people we could pull from inside Amazon from the managerial side, and 50 cold that we had to hire straight up from the local area or somewhere nearby. So we did, so we basically did 3 months of hiring, and that was my first real upskilling, I think, aside from learning operations and how to manage at scale. Hiring became another skill that I found really valuable, but also something that's totally a skill. And Amazon hires really, really, really well. The principles, the fundamentals that Amazon applies is world class. So I got to learn a lot about how to hire, what to read in people, kind of a general sense of you can learn a lot from somebody based on the questions. You have to learn as much as you possibly can. Excuse me. Ultimately, and you've heard me say this, but hiring is the most expensive thing that you do as a business owner. And that goes two ways. One, yes, in terms of compensation, but it's expensive when you don't retain. So you have to hire the right people or else you have a retention problem, and retention is expensive.
Yep.
So you want people to stay there. You want people to be good, because ultimately we had to look at it as we were going to launch this building. And not only that, we were all a competitive, type A group of people that wanted to be the best in the world and in the world's biggest business. And that's really exciting, but you have to be excellent, and you have to have excellent people around you. And so finding those people is not easy, especially when your pool might be geographically limited.
Right.
So that's why it took so long. Meanwhile, at this point, it's the end of 2019 into the first couple months of 2020.
Yeah.
So this was December of 2019, January of 2020.
And the building's not open yet, right?
The building's not even. The building has the superstructure and about, I would say 30 or 40% of its conveyance. It's internal robotics and conveyance platforms. And so we had this team basically that we'd fielded. Right at this point, we haven't hired any associates yet, but we've hired our management team, at least a shell of it. And we get that team kind of set up all by shifts, all by departments, a smattering of experts mixed in with brand new hires, all of which had to get smart fast. And then we took them all to Oklahoma, where that other building was. Get to Oklahoma, and they hand us the keys to the building. So in the meantime, we're teaching classes. All of us that were senior operations managers at the time, that were heads of department, were basically trying to educate and take our experience from running excellent world-class sites and distill that into the team, and then prove it in a new concept in a new type of building. That building was setting the standard at the time because it was the only building of its type. So meanwhile, we are getting ready to, I think we were in our third or fourth week down there in Oklahoma, and somebody was at I don't remember what the NBA team is in Oklahoma. I'm not a basketball guy, but
Thunder.
They were at the game, or they were getting ready to start the game, and they canceled it because somebody got sick. And that was the first domino we saw of COVID hitting.
Right.
So now, and then things ramped up super fast after that, as
Right.
we can all remember, right?
Yeah.
It went from 1 week to 2 weeks to this is going to turn into a giant shit show.
Right.
So now I had 60, 70 managers, all getting ready to launch a building. And everything was a hard stop.
Right.
All the workers on our building weren't showing up for work, or they were told not to, and it delayed us. And so we basically had to iterate super fast. So we helped that building get into some sort of standardization for COVID, 6 foot distancing, all of that shit.
Stupid shit.
Stupid shit. We helped them get ready, and then we took our basketball and walked away.
Yeah.
So we all went remote. But now I needed to legitimize, what I was going to do with 70 managers. Well, all of us did. And so we decided to do 3 weeks of just straight classes. And the way that I pitched it to our team was basically like, let's teach everybody all of this stupid shit, all the mistakes that we made. Let's teach them like a classroom for these three weeks. And so one of my buddy and I, who were running the inbound department, basically took all of our experience, wrote it all out, and then built classes and basically put them into an academy of how to run an excellent world-class business. So we got lucky. Honestly, in the end, that was the best thing to happen to us. Things started getting a little bit better. We were starting to see some progress on the building. The main internal structure of the building finally got finished. All of the conveyance and everything was built. And we had basically a June, I think, start date of getting that building launched.
Of 21?
Of 20.
Okay.
Of 20. And so we had to launch this building in the middle of COVID. We had to hire 5,000 people. And then we were immediately on the hook for performance. Mm-hmm. Now we get a graduated performance series of goals, whatever. And our goal was to just crush it until we were the best building in the world. And so we ramped up, and I'm going to skip a little bit ahead on some of this stuff just because we don't need to get into all of it. But long story short, we were able to hire nearly 5,000 people by that peak. And peak is just that holiday season time frame, basically from October to January.
Right.
You're living a deployment. You're gone from your family. You're there 15, 18 hours a day if at a minimum. Mm-hmm. And then you're back home to sleep, and then you're back at it again all the way through to January.
Well, what I saw when you took us on a tour over there, it's an unbelievable amount of engineering and thought going through having all these conveyors run in multiple levels, millions and millions of packages on several floors, of which I may, as a consumer, purchase a toothbrush and a hairdryer, and they might come from completely different floors and opposite ends of the building and end up in the same box.
Yep.
In a couple hours, and it's a mind-blowing organizational feat. And people want to shit on the richest guys in the world, right? But you look at a guy like Jeff Bezos and what he built with Amazon. It's no accident that it's become the biggest business in the world. Like, the fact that it's really truly an example of what American ingenuity, what capitalism can produce and provide, and he frankly just capitalized on it.
Yep.
And a lot of people want to shit on huge companies like them, but frankly, that's a dude that built it. And, not just him, but all the people that he hired and the processes that he put in place, the controls he put in place, the level of expectation that just kept getting jacked up higher and higher. And the fact that it continues on that pace, like they're the biggest business in the world and they continue to innovate. They continue to grow. I mean, they just built a building, 7 or 8 miles from our door right here. The fact that they keep trying and pushing the envelope to try to get a package to your door quicker, cut down on those times. It's quite honestly, it's an amazing company, and it's just incredible what they built in relatively short amount of time. When did Amazon start?
1996.
96. Yeah. So, 25 years,
Yep.
30 years, from just starting to the biggest company in the world is pretty incredible.
Yeah. It's the biggest it's the biggest small business in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, every part of the business is broken down into an entrepreneurial effort. So well,
that's the thing that was surprising me, is the fact that you guys were really, 4 or 5 people were really allowed to just entirely run their own 2 million, 4 million square foot building. Like, you know, that's really amazing that they hand that much trust and control. And quite honestly, as a business owner, you hear it all the time. People are like, well, I want to hire, but I don't know if I can trust this guy to run that, or, like even like me bringing in you to then turn over operations and trust you to run it, or to trust Brandon to do the marketing right. Like there is a lot of trust, but the only way that you can grow and scale is to let go of control.
Yeah.
But you got to find the right people to hand that control to,
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you've got to set expectations. And Amazon, there's a quote that a bunch of us really like. Amazon's where great people go to feel bad about themselves.
Yeah, that's a good quote.
Because that's the standard. That's the level of pressure. And you have to deliver it, mm-hmm. No pun intended. But you absolutely do. So you have to get super smart as fast as you possibly can. And then you've got to be a great leader on top of that. And what I saw at Amazon was really good at hiring either hyper-technical people or great people leaders. But the people that were most successful had both and had to have both. And, especially guys from the military, Amazon really struggled to retain military talent because 2 things, and this is something that, you and I have talked about in the past, where some guys leave the military and they think that their skills and their leadership is going to translate to a bunch of civilians and that they've got it figured out. Mm-hmm. But they forget that they're going to have to work really freaking hard. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit that I found, like some entitlement of like, oh, I've got this. I know how to lead people. Well, Amazon's also hyper technical, mm-hmm. right? And so that's something a lot of guys were not prepared for, is the fire hose of learning as quickly as you can on a technical level. And then also having to be great leaders. So the first time they failed from a human leadership standpoint, they were like, I don't understand why. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because you can't knife hand somebody and call them a fuckhead. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like you've got like, there's a huge diverse group of people that you have to then be able to translate what you're saying to them. Mm-hmm. By the way, you also have to be brilliant in terms of how you operationally perform. So
when you have to be able to do their job and show them
100% too. So like, mm-hmm. that's another thing, and we do it here at MKC, where we make every single person that we hire start downstairs blasting knives, mm-hmm. Assembling that, like learn every part of our business, mm-hmm. Because we both agreed that needs to be something that everybody does no matter what position, so that they can really understand. Mm-hmm. And same thing, Amazon at every executive level, at every level that in operations, they all have to start and work in every position.
Right.
And then you've got to get smart enough to improve that.
Right.
Excuse me. Anyway, so we launched in June, and by the end of peak, basically we decided that we were going to try to go after a world record for most packages processed on the inbound side for a building of that type. Because, mind you, nothing has been, aside from the other building that was built, nothing has been stress tested, or, we basically, records were there, internal Amazon records were there for us to break. And so we went after it. Mm-hmm. So, hitting 1 million packages from the inbound side and then several million on the outbound side are like key benchmarks to show a cost-effective, high-performing building. Mm-hmm. And in the first year of business, you never see them do that. So mm-hmm. we wanted to prove that we could do that, and we did. Mm-hmm. So long story short, we did that, set records and all that fun stuff, and built a really cost-effective business.
Well, and what that means is that you guys talked about that when we were out there, but you guys are receiving in semis, was it 1 million packages stowed in 24 hours?
Yeah.
So a million separate packages of everything from blenders to toothbrushes and everything in between. To unload 1 million packages off of semis and then basically stow those in 4 different floors of a building across a couple million square feet into a location that they can then be found again.
Yep.
all in 24 hours. And how many packages a day are they shipping out during like peak season?
Out
of like that building
per shift, it's around 500, between 3 and 500,000.
Is that an 8-hour shift?
No, a 10-hour shift. Mm-hmm. So they're capable of doing about 1 million a day for a 24-hour shift if they need to during peak, and that's pretty typical. And that's a huge feat too, to be able to not only do that, but at 99.9% delivery accuracy. Is the standard, right? So you get 0.01% failure rate. Basically, is the only grace you get out of millions of packages.
It's a mind-blowing business. Well, let's talk about now how you ended up coming on board here. I we had started our business kind of about the time that you guys were starting to set up that building in 2020. That's when we had launched our website, and then January 1st basically is when I was full-time, and we had grown enough throughout that summer that by August, that was 2021. So we grew throughout that year. And then into the next year of 2022 was when by that point, we realized we actually had a business that could be successful. I mean, it took that whole first year for us to be like, okay, this is really something. And we started to see that we were going to definitely need help on the operations side of managing people as we scaled, managing the process. And it was August of 2022 last year that I posted a director of operations position for MKC. Now you're talking about working and managing in the world's largest company, and now potentially applying for a job at the world's smallest company.
Yeah.
What was that thought process, and why did you do that?
Well, backtrack a little bit on that. In 2021, I was an MKC customer first. So back in 2021, I bought my first Blackfoot, and at some point, I think in that October of 21, my truck got broke into and my Blackfoot was stolen. And so I posted an Instagram post to my buddies like, dang it, because we were all big fans and thought it was a great knife. And it's like, my knife got stolen, and I think you guys were tagged. And I got a DM that basically said, don't worry, we got you, and we're going to replace it. And I was blown away. Coming from Amazon, where we are a customer obsessed business, I knew immediately that MKC was going to be successful if that was the policy. If that was how MKC was looking at their business. And so just thinking to myself, I had no reason to leave Amazon at all. Things were going great. I was promoting to the L8 level. I was an assistant general manager at the time, running the entire site in Spokane. And so I think I had responded to your DM, or I had wrote I think sometime in March of 22, you and I talked on LinkedIn. I sent a message or something to you, just like, hey man, you replaced my knife. This is excellent. This is the kind of stuff that makes building our businesses great. And we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and and I kind of gave you a little bit of my background, and you were kind of like, oh, by the way, let's chat, like for real. And so you and I talked on the phone once or twice or 3 times or whatever. And then by April, I drove down here, April of 22. And this was where you were already looking kind of for a director of operations or some sort of operations manager. But I basically had sent you guys hey, let me do some due diligence on the company and really understand the problem set. So I sent you guys just a quick, like, hey, these are some of my questions.
Yeah, it wasn't quick. It was a list of questions. It was a formal document. And basically, he sent us a bunch of questions as we were getting ready to hire a director of operations, and he asked us, I don't know what you had, 20, 25 questions on there. And we had the answers to maybe one. Yeah. And that answer, I think, was, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But, so it was very clear that, like, holy shit, like, this guy knows some stuff that we don't know. And a lot of those things a lot of those questions, we had questions in our head too, but we just, we had been growing so fast that, we had not even begun to try to like solve for a lot of these problems and a lot of these questions, And I actually showed that letter to Dick, who's on our board of directors, and he had said that was basically the most impressive interview question like document that he had seen in all his years in business. Of like, he was like, okay, that's the kind of person that you need, because they're thinking about your business at a really high level. They're questioning you, not trying to beg for the job, but instead like interviewing you and making sure that like, are we all on the same board? Like, if you don't know the answer to these questions, fine, but do you want to solve them or not?
Yeah.
Or are they important to you or not?
Yeah.
Or it's like, well, no, we don't do that, but we don't care. We don't think we need to do that.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't need the job, right? So I was interviewing you guys too. And it was only because I wanted to know, I wanted to do, the business analysis like you would with somebody acquiring a company, the same thing. I wanted the information on your efficiency and all that. And I needed to understand MKC's potential before ever having any more of that conversation. So that was part of it. And then by April, I drove down here. Mm-hmm. You, Brandon, and I sat at a kitchen table, and we just talked about the future of the business.
My kitchen was my office at that point, and we were working in a 2,000 square foot garage shop.
Yeah.
Which really, looking back on it, and I think we're going to look back someday on this building and feel the same way that we do about that garage. That's the goal. But looking back on like the building you came from to the garage and the place that we were in, and then to the place that we're in just a little over a year later, it's pretty cool,
Yeah, well, this place, literally, you and your dad had dug just the footers of this place when I sat at that kitchen table. Mm-hmm. And those guys, actually, I remember the concrete guys showed up that day, and were setting up some of the concrete framing for the foundation of this place. Back when we had that conversation. And so we walked the building, we walked the garage and kind of talked through some of the building. And I talked a little bit about how, we could probably already improve some things. And and then it just kind of went from there. I basically had a time that I could leave. I knew with Amazon, and, our conversation continued, and I think we came to an agreement. We're able to figure something out. So my wife and I, talked about it. And I think it was really her credit, frankly. She was the one that was like, because I was cautious. Mm-hmm. We were leaving a really good thing for our family and for, in terms of how we were taking care of our family and the life we were living. And we were taking a giant risk, and she didn't bat an eye. So a lot of the credit goes to Crystal, frankly, where she looked at me and said, we should do this. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
It did, you definitely lost some salary coming over here initially. And what I will say, though, is it seems like you've definitely gained some more family time back.
Yeah.
I know we did talk about that, with every good thing also there tends to be some drawbacks. And like with Amazon, I know you'd talked that, it was a damn near 24-hour a day
truly
job.
Yeah. And honestly, that was the only part with Amazon that Crystal and I ever struggled with. Was I left the military to get out of being deployed all the time, and spending time with my family and being a great father and going to baseball games and doing all of the things. And that did not happen at Amazon. In fact, and then we knew that we would have to move every 3 years, just like the military.
Yeah.
And I was traveling all the time too, because as you scale at Amazon as an expert, you start getting shipped out to other buildings to fix their problems as well as run your department. So like,
right before you started here, I mean, you were out in Minnesota.
Yep.
Seattle. You traveled Portland. Quite a bit during that time that we were talking from April to August.
Yep. Yeah, I went to 4 different buildings on top of having to, run my own business in Spokane as well while having that conversation with you.
Right.
So you're busy. And I didn't get that kind of time that we had originally thought going into civilian life. Right. In fact, we probably worked as hard or harder, with Amazon.
Well, and that's something with, it's figuring out that balance. Like, what is quality of life? Is it just finances and bank account, or is it taking your kid to jujitsu at 4:00? You know, is it being able to run down to the school and go to a play, or you know, go do some hunting with your kids, or camping, or you know, and that's the stuff that we talk about. That you know, our electrician that is doing some work on our building, he was here till late last night doing some work, and we were talking about, you know, like yesterday he was going to come at 8 a.m, and then he decided to take his kid on a youth hunt, and they hunted all day, and he got here at 4:30.
Yeah.
And he said, I've just decided, like, every now and then I just have to just make it happen, because he didn't have the time for it. And we talked about that, about how we're trying to be better every now and then about just saying, like, nope, I'm going to schedule this, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
You know, because in the end, when you die, really, it's your memories you're left with. The money is what it is. You know, it doesn't seem to matter how much money you make, you tend to spend it.
Yeah, it's true.
And what's really most important, and it sounds cliche, but it's true, is it's that time spent with family. It's those memories. I mean, of all the stuff that I remember in my life, like, my best moments I've got are like with my daughters hunting, with my boy hunting, my wife, like, you know, being out in the field camping, that kind of stuff. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite, because I still at times don't do enough of that. Like, we've got this new camper sitting outside, and we didn't use it once this year except for a softball tournament. You know, but it's you know, that family part is extremely important, and it's important to me that as we hire people, that we can still allow our people to be able to do some of that, because I think that makes for happier employees in the end, and totally long-term employees, people that will stick around.
You know, that I'm still a work in progress when it comes to that. I think the opportunity here in the business that we've built here is absolutely makes that available. But then being present when you're in those moments is something that I'm not good at. So, like, it's great. I get to go take my kids to jujitsu twice a week. But then I've got to remember to be super present when I'm there and really enjoy that time, or else it's a waste of time. It's a waste for my kids and for me. And so that's something that I'm trying to figure out how to do as well. But then also that opportunity is an earned privilege. It's not something that you're entitled to. So you better freaking deliver when you're here. And when this business is our life, like, you know, for both of us, you know, we burned the proverbial boats when we came here. And we did it because, you know, we believed in this business, and we knew that this was going to be life. The other thing that I think that not enough people say is, in this case in particular, you know, meeting you and Brandon, and then Jess and the kids, we came into a family too. We have nobody here, you know, and ultimately I think this just gives so much credit to you and your family, and to Brandon, just in that, you know, we were embraced as family, and that just only secured what I thought about this business. It only just proved it right. And I think anybody that's ever met you or knows Montana Knife Company within our industry, and anybody else, knows that that's just the type of people that this business is. And I think it translates to our customers, who are also our family.
Right.
You know?
100%. And I say it all the time. It's quite honestly why I have a podcast, because I actually, you know, it kind of forces you to sit down and actually get to know the people that you get to be around. And we get to be around some really, really cool people in this business. And our customers, our employees, and then other people just from the industry, you know, with other companies. It really is a family affair. That's what I noticed when I went to the first Total Archery Challenge was, I didn't know anybody really, but I got to hang out in JP from Big Chino's tent, and I got a sense of that community and that family. And I was looking around, I was like, man, like, all these vendors from all these different companies are coming over, and they're just hanging out with each other. They're bullshitting with each other. They're giving each other hell. And it felt very community and family oriented. And that particular event, especially because it is where you can bring your family. It's not some big, you know, we were just at a really cool sniper competition, but it was all active duty guys. Like, that's not a family affair. It's family from the aspect of like dude to dude.
Yeah.
But you're not bringing your wife and kids to that. Where Total Archery Challenge was designed around bringing your kids in there, like, be 4 years old with a little plastic bow and plastic arrows in there, and they're welcome to shoot just as much as the most famous shooters are. I think that was the perfect event for me to go to in the beginning and realize what was possible in this industry versus going to a different event that might have felt way more competitive and way more ego driven.
Yeah.
It's amazing what we're getting to build. And what's exciting to me is it's kind of that feeling of like what we're doing really isn't possible. Even what we're facing with what we were just talking about yesterday, we're looking at property, we're looking at potentially buying some land and building a building. And quite honestly, like with the numbers that we're looking at and all the hoops that we have to jump through, and this is just very, very preliminary. It may not work out with this piece of property, but the point is it kind of seems impossible, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a huge daunting thing. And I even told our realtor, like, I'm not even actually sure where to go from here. Like, I was in the construction world, but I always came in when the planning was done, the subdivision was done, the architecture was done, the engineering was done, the utilities. I was involved for a while in Missoula about putting utilities in, but not the planning process, the permitting process. Like, quite honestly, I don't think any of us sitting here today even know how big our building should be,
right,
and what we should build and how we're going to lay that out, right?
Yeah.
That we have so much to learn and try to put together as frankly our best guess to build that next building. But to me, that's what's so freaking exciting.
Yeah.
The fact that it seems nearly impossible and that we actually don't even know what we're trying to do. Because I don't have the exact vision in my head, but I kind of have an idea of what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And how cool will it be in 5 years when we're sitting in that building?
Well,
right?
I mean, let's go back to when, that August when I started in 2022, your shop had a small office space and then literally a 2-car garage.
Yeah.
And then the forging shop side of it, we really didn't use other than like knife storage.
Storage of pallets of boxes.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Right. So there was literally, and I don't even know what that 2-car garage square footage is.
Well, it's not even. It's one big door. It's not even 2 doors.
Right.
Yeah. It's like you couldn't get a pickup in any other car in it. It's like 2 Toyota Corollas is what it is.
Yeah. In the desk space that we had in there for assembling knives was about the size of 2 of our laser rooms right now.
2 plastic or 3 plastic folding tables. Yeah.
And so I think one of the big challenges was like I knew where we needed to go, and we all did. Like we had a plan, and we met, and I was really happy in the first couple weeks of us, getting together as a now a 3-legged stool.
Mm-hmm.
And I really felt like, okay, we could talk a little bit about some vision because we needed that to basically synergize what the next year was going to look like and kind of what we needed to do on the operations side as well, and on the marketing side. And so, the other thing that we had a luxury of is that you and I could walk out of that garage and talk about the future on, when we were walking this place, because this place basically was a concrete pad. I think the superstructure walls were just built, and you and I could basically talk through, and I knew what I needed to build here for us to be able to scale. And so, ultimately when sitting in that little garage, I had to take, and this is what I did in those first couple weeks is I took basically a 5,000 person, 2.4 million square foot facility and backwards planned it to that little garage.
Yeah.
Truly. And that's still the path that we're on.
Right.
We did that, by September of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's basically the same game. I haven't changed that game plan since coming on board. And it's just about that elephant eating one bite at a time, just like us building the next building after this. It's just a small part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we had the luxury of being able to walk that building and kind of lay it all out. And it's just amazing to see it slowly grow. Now, one of the things that I learned, in Amazon, and one of the things that I'm doing here, that can probably be frustrating sometimes is some learning has to be organic. Because I could come in here and pull out the Toyota manufacturing manual and say, this is how you build the most efficient business in the world. These are the fundamentals that you follow. But half of the people in this building will go, I don't get it. And it's just because they haven't experienced it and they don't understand it. They haven't seen it work at scale, all that kind of stuff. So one of the lessons for me that came with coming here was I had to learn immediately to be patient, because we had 3 or 4 employees,
right?
5 including me, and then 6, 7 including you and Jess, and then 8 including Brandon.
Right.
So we didn't have hardly anybody, and so I think being able to think through how that was going to grow, and then follow the math behind it, what our throughput was, what our demand was, and then just be patient enough to let some of our employees downstairs learn lessons that were safe, that they were still going to make mistakes, but we were okay with.
Right.
But I also wanted them to kind of buy in organically on their own.
Right.
And so that's what's happening right now, right? Like, we could have built this place and built our assembly stations the way that you and I were just like, it's going to be like this. But until you get people assembling knives, doing it ergonomically, doing it how, what is people over the course of 20,000 knives, what lessons are they learning in the assembly process, right? Or else you and I would have been changing stations every couple weeks.
Right.
But instead, let's be patient and allow us to kind of build that out and let it organically turn into the most efficient process. And we have the luxury of time. And so that's basically how I'm trying to build it going forward. Is I know the next steps. You and I talk about them all the time. But it's kind of helping the team get there on their own. And I think that's only going to lead to a more bought-in team and a team that really has a level of ownership that you just aren't going to get anywhere else.
Well, what I like and I'm excited about is, and it's I was actually thinking about it last night, like the growth that our employees have already shown. When Tristan came to work here, he was literally still in high school.
Yeah.
He was coming out here, after school and whatnot. And, like when Melissa came to work here, she had been trying to work on an excavation crew in the spring, and it was cold and muddy and whatever. And she was trying to learn how to run an excavator, and she was super quiet and not sure. And now she's leading stand-ups and meetings. And I'm super excited to see the growth. And that growth is really just getting started, because as they start to learn more from you and they start to learn how to manage and operate like some of our systems, I'm just as excited to see the growth of our own people over the next 10 years and what kind of operators and management level people we're going to create. And I'm proud of doing it with people that we're training, and not just everyone that comes through with an MBA.
Yeah.
That we can teach those people from the ground up and hopefully down the road ultimately have literally hundreds of people that work in this building that will ultimately turn around and be able to help our community and make for a better place to live. I wish that there was one of these companies in every single town in America. Like, that's how you really bring back American pride. That's one of the biggest problems that I do see right now, is that we have a lack of people being proud in what they're doing and what they're creating, a lack of excitement about where they're going to work, especially working for some of these giant corporations. It's tough, like Amazon's a pretty special place, but like ultimately you are so far from the actual owners. It's hard to have like that personal attachment. You know, we need thousands of small businesses around this country, in my opinion, to really have people feel like a sense of that pride of their community.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk about the median age group of who we have working here.
Yeah.
And I know it drives you crazy too, but I mean, I think we're around 22 would be my guess. So maybe a little bit older, maybe 24 if you add some of the, but the average.
I drive the average up
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm 42 and I'm an old person
Yep.
here. It's crazy. But those young people, I hate it when people shit so much on the young generation. Yes, there are a bunch of young kids that are shitheads, but there's also a lot of 45-year-old guys that are total wastes of spaces too.
That's exactly right.
You know?
Yep.
I would much rather hire someone who's 21 that's got a great attitude, that's excited about life, like their whole life's ahead of them.
Yep.
They want to learn. Like, yeah, there's a lot of kids that are lazy and don't have it figured out yet, but man, there's a lot of kids that are, I mean, we've hired just a couple lately that are just great attitude. You walk in, they're smiling, they're happy.
Yeah.
They're eager to learn.
Yep.
I think they see as much as they can at their age, the opportunity ahead of them. I don't think hardly anybody around here really, truly, actually really gets the opportunity, but I think a lot of them do as much as they can.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I think they'd be. I don't know. Yeah, it's when you walk in, it also gives you energy, right? Like us being older guys, and you're hanging around a bunch of young kids. They're in good shape. They go hunt together. They fish together. They hike together.
Yeah.
They truly actually like each other, which is again, it's a cool atmosphere, and I think that's a testament definitely to what we've all built as far as hiring. And I always say, don't be. If you're in a giant swimming pool, Olympic-sized swimming pool, and there's a piece of poop floating in on the other end, are you going to stay in that pool? And the answer is no. Well, there's hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. Does that little piece on the other end matter? And the fact of the matter is, it does matter.
Yeah.
And it can be even in a company the size of Amazon on one floor.
Seriously.
And I'm sure you saw it where one person can bring down literally dozens and dozens of people's, if not hundreds of people's attitudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cancer that can spread.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I say like that time it takes. One of the things that's scary for us is hiring. Like it's going to be difficult because of where we are, right? And for us to scale the size we want to. But to our credit in each one of the in each part of our departments and what we run, we don't. And this is a shout out to everybody that's in this building right now, is we don't compromise when it comes to hiring.
Right.
And that's something that I think is really important. Like you have to spend the time and you have to hire the right people. And every single person that walks through these doors is absolutely the right person. And they've got unlimited potential. And I think it's really important that we celebrate that. And like I said, they're so young. And this is a call to all businesses. Like, don't be afraid to hire that 18-year-old kid, but do your due diligence in terms of understanding what right looks like, what a great 18-year-old kid looks like. And we have such diversity in terms of, both males and females, different backgrounds, all, and we're really fortunate that way to have great young people of all walks of life that all contribute by different opinions, but all have the same end goal in mind, and all are owners in their own way. And that's something that we demand.
Yeah.
And I, that's just my own shout to all businesses, is like, find owners, find people that are going to enter your business as owners.
Yeah.
And then take care of them, or else they're not going to want to be there. And that's something we do, I think.
What's up to this point with everything that you've done from the military, with all your college training through Amazon, what's the hardest thing that you've done?
This meaning leaving a sure thing with Amazon, and basically lighting it all on fire, in order to bring American manufacturing in a Montana business, in a family business, and grow something that you truly believe in. The fact that we make knives is great, but this business in general is more important and the most difficult thing I've ever done. Having to distill, all of that experience and time down to a 2-car garage, to then try to grow it up to something as big as humanly possible, while maintaining the quality, while delivering our value proposition to our customers, while serving our customers like we could never do anywhere else. that's daunting.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting, but it's one of those things like, that nothing can prepare you for, and you just really do have to take those small little bites.
Right.
So I would say this is by far the hardest thing,
mm-hmm.
because my family and our families live and die by what we do every day here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's motivating, but it's also, it also is one of those things that you can get overwhelmed really quickly if you look at it from that standpoint. You just got to have faith that you've got the right partners and the right group of people to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I totally agree with you on that. 'Cause I also quit a super steady, good job with all the security in the world, with a family to start something with that basically people said wasn't possible. And to bring American manufacturing to a tiny, small town, in which we're making weapons that we then really, struggle to be even able to legally advertise on certain platforms. To dance around all the little kind of woke parameters that a lot of the Googles and the Facebooks tend to throttle back and put barriers up for you to be able to do that, and then just to start to grow it and not to go borrow a bunch of money, not to take on a bunch of investment, and just do it one knife customer at a time. But I honestly also feel like that's why it feels like every drop that we do, every sale that we put out feels so good. Like that reward also feels better than anything. It's like it's the hardest thing you've ever done, but it's also the most rewarding.
Yeah.
And then the good feeling I get of the way that we're able to help the employees that we hire to train, to teach, and the excitement of what's really possible. Because I think it's like taking even having you come in here, it's like having a race car come in, but then putting a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit up, right? But I feel like we're like this Toyota Corolla that's on a racetrack that we're trying to build our cars we're going, and down the road we want to compete at Daytona.
Yeah.
But everybody's just zipping by us right now at 100 miles an hour, and we can't go that fast. But then you do see some of these companies go by you basically like a rocket ship, but then they crash.
Yep.
Right? Because they're skipping certain really important steps.
Yeah.
There's certain fundamentals in their business. They through major investment, through huge debt, through huge steps, through huge hiring swaths of people that they don't even have jobs for them or know what they're going to do. They just hiring people and just kind of basically like growing at the fastest rate possible to try to grow up a value of a company so big. But then all of a sudden it's like re-entering the atmosphere, and those things start to shred apart.
Yeah.
Parts start flying off of it. And the next thing you know, there's nothing left. And I think what we're trying to do is much the opposite, where we're pouring concrete, and then we're framing, and we're running the correct wiring in the correct way and the correct plumbing, and like we're building this thing. And I'm biased, but I feel like we're really truly building it the right way, where we're also risk adverse right now, where if the economy really does get really terrible, we can also pull back a little bit. We can tighten some things up and get through where we aren't servicing giant amounts of debt. We don't have some investors saying, "Hey, where's my return?
Yep.
What are you guys doing over there? Why? I thought you said you were going to have folding knives out on this month. How come they're not out yet?"
Yep.
And we can say, "Hey, we're not ready. We're trying to make it better. We're doing things the right way to where down the road, I think we're going to look up in 20 years and realize we built, one of the biggest and best knife manufacturing companies over 20 years, but it's going to then still be sustainable for the next 20 and 50 after it."
Well, what's success? So what you just said, I think is a huge dichotomy in our country right now, and in capitalism in general. I think for a long time, especially from like basically the late 90s all the way till right now, success has changed a lot in how it's defined in business across the United States. I think a blue chip company that has been around for 50, 60 years, 100 years or whatever, those were considered success. That was Sears or whatever, like name your company, Coca-Cola,
Nosler, Leupold,
some of these, that have been around forever, 75 years for some of these companies. And like, that was a long time. That was the gold standard of success. Mm-hmm. The longer your going concern survives, the more successful you are. And then there was a shift in terms of venture capitalism, in terms of how people were building businesses, and with the growth of tech companies, that success then became very egocentric and individualized, where founders started becoming billionaires in months versus founders becoming thousandaires and millionaires over the course of 25, 30, 40 years. And it's not the dollar sense of the founder in the end, it's the customer. So that's where I think the shift has changed.
Right.
It's all about who can make the most damn money the fastest. And as great as capitalism can be, the one thing that's more important than that sustains the going concern is the customer.
Right.
If you have established yourself for 25, 30, 40, 50 years, and you've continued to delight and deliver on behalf of your customer, that is success.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. And we could make some certain moves right now to absolutely blow this thing up. And the top 2 or 3 of us in this company make millions of dollars.
Sure.
But then, frankly, not long after that, it would probably all implode.
Yep.
Right. And it wouldn't be good for anyone that works for us. And ultimately, it would probably go away, and the next thing would come along.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, a slow build towards something that's going to be good for everybody, and down the road, the top 2 or 3 will still make good money. But to me, it's not about just putting tens of millions of dollars in your bank account and then moving on to the next thing. Like, it's just never been my focus with this company. It's more of I want to prove that it's possible to build and sustain, not just build, build and sustain.
It's hard.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. And when it gets hard, people sell.
Right.
And then, you just see conglomerates continue to grow, and good on them for having a business that does that. Sure. And I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking any business when it comes to that. But I am saying that I think the American dream is being diluted to an egotistical, capitalistic thought that is like, let's make as much money as possible, when in the end, the American dream is also about providing jobs.
Yeah.
It's about making a quality of life for the people that you support, delivering an amazing product to the customer.
Right.
Like, you've got to be willing to look at yourself critically and say, like, am I winning in all places?
Right.
And if it's just, am I winning in my bank account, then I don't think that's winning.
Right. Yeah. You could be losing really hard in a lot of other areas.
Yeah. And think about all those people and the families. Like, I think we get to be of service. And this is ultimately why, I think I love it so much. Being here is like, every single day I get to serve just like I did in the military. And you've got to find it. Because most guys struggle when they come into the military, the brotherhood or that feeling of service. And they get to the civilian world and they realize how freaking selfish it is. And it's hard to relate. Well, you've got to find that place that you can continue to serve if that's what you really want to do in your life, or if that's what fills you. So that's the selfish part about it for me, is like, it's really us being able to take care of every single one of these people, that are here in this building, and our customers.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Well, man, got anything else?
Yeah, this has been great. I appreciate it. I hope we didn't lose too many subscribers to the channel, giving them a marathon.
If you don't have a lot of subscribers, you don't have a lot to lose.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. No, I much appreciate you taking the risk that you did. I think you know that, and I think I'm aware of it. But it's cool to me to have you come on board and become an owner in this process and in this company, and take ownership in the way that you did, and bring your family along. What you bring to our brand is irreplaceable, and I think we're all pulling the same direction. We all want the same thing, and it's I don't know, it's super exciting. It's super cool, and it's fun to do it with people that you actually like.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love everybody here. I love our customers, and we love you. So
Yeah.
thanks. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Let's get to work.
All right.